Hello and earnest greetings to everyone watching and listening. My name is Naziha, and I'm sitting here in Karachi, Pakistan right now. And it's unbelievable how I could speak to the world, the beautiful world out there. Let me just first say that nothing can account for my present delight of being here today. And the occasion and the concept of collective energies across the globe is just extraordinary, really. I mean, we are not really our circumstance, right? We are our energies. So it's just really 6 degrees of separation, I would say. And my gratitude for this honor is beyond expression, really. Therefore, I'm not going to restrict my annotations to the weather. Instead, I'd like to share something that will make my attendance worthwhile. It's quite a fascinating tale of my life. Well, at least I'm fascinated. But without going into a long rigmarole of the chain of events, let me just first begin with the primary point, and that is human voice. The human voice is such a powerful thing that more than often we don't even recognize its weight in its entirety. Simply listening to someone, I mean, telling his or her story, you know, it can introduce us to, I would say, an exceptional depth of reflection and compassion. Because our voice has power if we are motivated to practice it more than often and continuously. It can open doors to unlimited and endless possibilities. Human voice in any form, be it a song, a speech, a hum, a whisper, you know, someone telling their story, anything for that matter. I mean, each note that we express to one another, it's connection. If it comes from our hearts, it represents 1,000 words, you know, because I feel, and what I've learned through this journey of my life till date is that human connection is far better by human voice, by listening, rather than human touch. And this is the prelude of my inspiring zone of dissertation today. When we were kids, back in those times, parents thrashing their children or spanking their children for discipline was common practice. And I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that different children have distinctive sensitivities, and mine took a shot at running away from it. You know, firstly inciting it and then escaping from it. Having said that, I remember that as a teenager, I began to fuel my mom's anger, driving her to run after me, and then I would run round and round till I would lock myself up in my room. And despite feeling hideous, I began to enjoy this for indefinite reasons, I would say. I used to read fairy tales at that time when I wasn't even a teenager, like I was 11. And I remember I would pray for an angel to come on a flying carpet with a magic wand to transform my life. Because the idea of home became daunting for me. I wanted to run away, you know? But as you say, you can run, but you can't hide. Nevertheless, my first escape was at the age of 14. I just went outside of the house and stood by the roadside, waiting for a miracle. And then a car stopped by with two men, and they took me for a ride. We ended up in a big apartment. And I had no clue as to what exactly was going to happen, but my intuition was in red alert, as to say. So inadvertently, I began to run around the room like I used to when my mom was running after me for a beating. I ran and ran and ran till the boys got tired And eventually they dropped me back from where they picked me up, the same sidewalk near my house. And I learned that there are times when blessings are wrapped in our dilemmas, because the practice of running around and making my mother run after me and then getting tired and spare me the beating really facilitated me that day. So I came home and locked myself up in my room again, and I didn't speak to anybody, and then forgot about it. You know, as young kids, just 14, you recover pretty soon, especially when you're unharmed. 3 years down the line, when I was 17, the inkling of escape dwindled for 3 years, but I came across an ad in the newspaper when I was 17 for a paying guest. And I confided in my domestic help, gave her the pocket money, which I saved at that time, in addition to a few things of mine, to sort of move them to the place given in the address. And well, the maid vanished after a couple of days, but I proceeded to the assumed address, where I observed that I was taken to a room where most of my things were missing, but some of them were there. And the lady's vibes were petrifying, you see? So I knew something was terribly wrong there. Minus a word, I just stepped out of the door instantly, took an auto and came back home. But this time I sobbed like a child. And I told my mom everything. She sobbed too. But things got back to routine in no time. And then 2 years later, when I was 19, there came my third escape, through a friend, per se, who introduced me to her middle-aged male friend, I remember, in order to facilitate me with the passport process. Somehow I had this idea that if I can make my passport, I could run anywhere in the world and I could hide. Such were innocent times. But instead, her friend took me to a flat, and I applied the identical strategy, of running around. The gentleman was the beast. I still remember him, his face, and the name. And the result was that I was successful. I was successful to get out of the door, and I ran as fast as a defiant teenager could, grabbed an auto, and came back home. That day, I finally realized that there was a bigger hell outside than inside. However, the idea of escape merely deferred till I could find a better and an intelligent approach. As to say that if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, but not the goal. So that was my goal at that point in time. Anyway, all this happened because the motive behind was that I felt like I had so much to say without being at liberty of speaking to a single creature. I remained unheard, as if I was having this existential crisis in my teenage, which people have in their 80s and 90s. Anyway, in a few months, out of the blue, I had this opportunity of an audition for a news presenter. Back in those days, there were no TV channels except one, a government channel, and there were several production houses who used to sell the news packages or reports to what do you call that? The TV channel. And I was instantly selected, you know? And my journey of being a camera presenter commenced on a daily wage. Time advanced in years, and few years later, various channels began to operate. Many of them got licenses. I became a recognized face. And the USP was the camera liked me, you know? That was the best thing that happened to me, because I looked straight into the camera, I remember, as if I was talking to another person who was listening, though it was just news, but yet I was able to speak to someone, if it makes sense. Few years passed, and the feeling of being unheard hardly ever left me. Something was still missing, I would say. And one fine day, I remember, I think 12 years ago in 2009, yeah, I called it quits. I left news anchoring, you know, just like that. And I decided to pursue being a documentary filmmaker. It just, at that point, without any formal education, Google was a lifesaver, I would say. And without much thinking, it was an amazing feeling, like some kind of a calling. I chose to cover the life on the streets of Karachi, which was nothing but easy. The vagabonds on the roads that we see everywhere in this part of the world used to trouble me and irritate me at times. Perhaps in my subconscious, I could resonate with these souls, with them. So I became curious to know more and the reality behind destitution, homelessness, escape. What goes with these people who really run away from home and are never able to come back? However, I found no support from my supervisors at that time from the TV channel that I was working for, except one supervisor who permitted me to create the documentary in question, but discreetly. Um, and so, like a one-woman army, I ended up doing the research, the legwork, the liaison with the NGOs and the real-life characters, the voiceover, music, post-production, and all that. Um, the end result was beyond belief. It was pretty effective, I would say. Um, in terms of the few files were moved on the provincial level concerning the child protection bill, people began to notice these unseen flowers on the road. Many other channels began to labor on the same subject thereafter, but I had the privilege of being the trailblazer, except the channel broadcasted it only once and heartlessly sacked me shortly, without reason or even notice. Lo and behold, the very next month after I was being sacked, I received a call from Islamabad from a nonprofit, the Intermedia Asia Foundation, that my documentary Footpath, as it was called, it was chosen for an award in excellence in human rights reporting with a cash prize. And considering the integrity, I instantly called my channel and the CEO refused to speak with me. And I got the message that they had nothing to do with the documentary or, the prize whatsoever. So I had this chance to go alone to Islamabad, receive the award, give a speech, and God, I felt so important for the first time in my life. It was a feeling, sensation beyond words. Sadly, I had no way that at that point in time to procure my original work from the TV channel that I worked for. So I couldn't pursue it any further, Uh, Also, then finding another job, settling my own mind. Let's just say life happened. And 5 years later, this is in January 2015, I had this lifetime opportunity of being in the company of world's greatest humanitarians, Edie. I don't know what to say. There was so much talk in silence. It was magical. Edie's vibes were, what to say, beyond the worldly world. I couldn't help but ask for his permission to cover his way of life, his simplicity, his modesty, his wisdom, his out of this world humanitarian altruism. I mean, how? I mean, I wanted to know it all. And I made this documentary called The Lamp. Edie sadly was on his last leg in those days due to age and diabetes. He was almost 90, I remember. Um But I was blessed to have gone through this venture anyway, and it was completed. Um, it turned out to be the beginning, really, of a defining period in my life. But Edie passed a year later. And only recently, a sequel called The Flame has been concluded in continuation of The Lamp, which is about to be released on the 8th of July. But during all these years, coming back to the point, I never forgot about the street flowers, about footpath. It took me seven long years to procure my work somehow and amalgamate it with a new vigor, you know. And I reworked the entire thing. Street Bullets was the outcome. And it turned out to be so brilliantly beyond my anticipations because it actually bagged 3 awards last year in the US in the film festivals, one of them Seattle Film Festivals, and even this year in the Indie Filmmaker Film Festival. So it bagged actually 4 awards in a matter of 6 months. I felt so rewarded, so enriched, but there was more to do. The imperative occurrence was that this time, whilst editing, I listened, I heard, I felt each word that these children had to say and had spoken. And every expression was like a reality check. You know, one of the children said that a person who escapes home can earn as much as 100,000 rupees a day, but it's as good as 1 rupee. Wow. I mean, it hit me like lightning. And the other one said that dreams don't knock their doors. So why dream of dreams? And one of them once was hit by a truck. And he told me that nobody, I mean, there was people who saw, but nobody helped him get up till he was able to get back up on his own. Uh, and that's not all about it. There are all kinds of abuses that these children and innocent minors go through. Like there's no check and balance or law for that matter over here till date, because nothing has changed. Because nothing has changed. And at times, people who are supposed to protect them are instead harming them, damaging them. And imagine that the landlords or the mafia mostly takes the girls for the purpose of prostitution or child labor, domestic labor. In addition, the easy access to needles from the garbage and the hospital waste tempts them towards drug use very conveniently. And most of them sniff glue, ending up in heroin addiction and eventually dying as teenagers mostly. And those who survive, they become gang members or criminals for that matter. And my heart wailed, you know, because of everything that these children go through and then they become. The least I could do was listen to them. Many of them today, I just recently heard that they have enough sense of dignity and they're living a normal life, thankfully. But many have died, and some of them have, they fell victim to AIDS. But recently, I saw some of these children selling packets, you know, small children, 7, 8 years only. They were selling small packets of chips or toys on the roadside, but they weren't begging. So I saw a change. And I sat with them and spent some time with them in a cafe, and it felt so real. I mean, just listening to their small joys and big troubles. God. And their tiny hearts were smiling at the face of their fate. And yet people still brushed them aside mostly. Like they're some creepy crawlies or, you know, needless beings, unheard, unseen, unwanted. And some of them even have dreams of going to school. So this was a wake-up call for me. And it also reformed me as a person, and not only as a person, but as a storyteller. Every word they spoke tapered my pain of being unheard for so long. I, well, you could say a calm overcame the storm, and I began to feel like an extinguished volcano. After 12 months, um, uh, rather a year ago from now, I became certain to commit my works mostly to being the voice of the voiceless. Since I know that what it means, the agony of feeling useless, I believe that every story matters only if we can tell them. Every being just needs one person to believe in them, to make them believe that they matter. Be it a laborer, a street child, or a neighbor, an orphan, a lonely stranger, even people within our own community and friends, family. And more often than not, all they need is a voice for their voice, you know, an ear for their untold feelings. That's it. And in the recent times, we have learned this even more, what COVID-19 has taught us, that how important is the human voice, how important it is to be connected by hearing the other being. Let them speak their heart. Sometimes it's very difficult to speak out your heart. And you keep suppressing it for years and years and years, and you feel that your life don't really matter. But if you vent it out, it makes so much of a difference, if not all. So this is my view that kindness of this sort somehow returns in ways beyond our expectations. So being the love of the loveless makes me feel unquestionably enriched and has been the best escaping venture I ever made, I would say. And I just want to conclude with the gist that what I've learned in life is that there are no failures, just lessons for success. No one is more, no one is less. It's time we stop judging and start loving. And I believe that every dark has a light, every wrong has a right, and there is dawn for every night. Each unseen has a sight. And last but not least, there's a joy in every plight, as my story suggests. And if we continue to create the same energies, around us, like we're doing, I mean, so much goes out to the World Unity Week, Sign Earth, Global Silent Minute, Parenting 2.0, and all these collaborative energies. I mean, I'm short of words to express what it means. It makes me so happy to be part of this because it's like a dream come true. People are actually not just saying that let's do something, they are doing it. And no one would remain unheard now in that matter. I've seen so many events during this week, and I think I've learned more than what I've learned from the books ever. Recently, I've been watching, I just have to complete it, on spirituality, for example. I mean, it's an eye opener how truthful and how honest one can be in using one's voice that comes from the heart. If we truly believe in the angels of our spirits, the inner voice that continuously conveys um, that compassion is the only way to life. And it makes it worth living. And most importantly, kindness can never be paid back, only forward. So, yeah, that was the story that I wanted to share. I've said my say. I would say thank you all for indulging me. I feel absolutely thrilled and very, very grateful, humbled, and honored. And I hope that it helps uh, because every voice matters, like I said. It should reach somewhere.